Hello, everyone, and welcome. So excited to be with you all today. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your very busy February. I'm sure it is a pleasure to be with you all. As is our custom, we're going to go ahead and give people a couple of minutes to shuffle on in. While we're doing that, would love people to hop in the chat and let us know where they're dialing in from. Wow. Already so much diversity in the chat from all over the place. From I think we've got Pacific and Atlantic. We've got maybe even coast to coast in Canada as well. Honolulu, so deep Pacific. Good to see you, Joel.
I feel like romper room. I see Carol and I see
A lot of familiar names and faces. So thank you all so much. It's truly. I mean, this is a big milestone for us, and hopefully a big milestone for y'all in terms of what this can unlock in Keeper. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get things started. So I'm going to share my screen. We have an uncharacteristic addition to my normal webinar, and that is a slideshow. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Okay. So, folks, welcome to the Keeper, the official launch, the worldwide, but really more like America and Canada wide launch of Keeper Receipts. So I'm going to talk about what we're going to talk about today. First is we're going to introduce who's on this today. So you've got myself truly, but I will save our special guest for the rest of the introductions. We're going to walk through what Keeper Receipts does, why it's so helpful, and how firms can really take advantage of it. We're going to then talk about Sherri-Lee. Well, I guess I spoiled it. And we're going to have some Q&A with her. And then last but not least, we're going to have some Q&A with y'all and answer any questions you may have about Keeper Receipts or otherwise. Okay, so you got me. Hopefully you know me by now, but in case you are new to Keeper, I am Ben. I'm our CEO here. And it is the privilege of mine to be able to work with our engineers to ship new software and then get to come on and talk about it with y'all. Joining me is Sherri-Lee, who is, she runs Balsam Way, which is a brewery-focused bookkeeping and accounting firm. And she is an accountant par excellence and also a just wonderful tech partner to work with. Truly has been instrumental in getting Keeper Receipts to where it is today, helping kick us in the pants to fix some things and especially make sure that it's high functioning, especially in Canada. So thank you, Sherri-Lee, for joining us today.
Absolutely.
All right. In case you are new to Keeper, I'm going to talk for a little bit about what Keeper is. So Keeper is, in short, one app to run your month-end close. It is a suite of tools that all come together so you have one place at the end of the month where you can go to do everything from communicate with clients, to track your work, to catch and correct coding errors, to when you finish running your close, deliver reporting for your clients that they actually want to read. The unique thing about Keeper is that it's directly integrated to your client's accounting ledger. So when you see a transaction, you can edit it right in Keeper and it will sync back to QuickBooks. And that goes beyond just transactions and beyond just QuickBooks, but to anything in both QuickBooks and Xero. You can edit and it will sync live in both directions. But there was something that was missing, something that I think made that one app to run your bookkeeping business not quite true for some subset of our users. And you told us about it. So as is our custom, we listened, and I am pleased to introduce the global launch of Keeper Receipts. Okay, I'm going to talk about 3 reasons why you should use Keeper Receipts, and then we're going to dive into a demo. So Keeper has always been about 2 things: giving you one place to do your work and getting faster responses from your clients. Keeper Receipts does both. It's integrated natively into the close page, as you'll see in a bit. So there's nothing new you need to learn. It will feel very comfortable, and there's nothing new you need to train your clients on. It's also one place for your clients to go. So truly one place they need to go to give you everything. They don't need to bounce back and forth between different solutions and different apps and remember or forget or bounce around. So that means less confusion and more answers more quickly. Okay, but once you've gotten the documents in place, that's only half the battle. We also have to help you process them. And here we have suggestions powered by AI and rules to help you automate a lot of your coding work. That starts with a powerful OCR engine to extract all the data out of the document that you or your clients upload. And then from there, we can suggest coding based on what's available in the ledger. And we have a robust rules engine to automate your coding work. Last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, Keeper has really deep access to your client's accounting ledger. And what that means, first and foremost, for receipts is you don't have to worry about duplicates anymore, because we're going to flag them. We're going to allow you to match the item to the receipt item to that transaction instead of posting a duplicate transaction. All right, so time to put my money where my mouth is and show you guys a little demo. All right, so first things first, you can find Keeper receipts right here on the close page in your client uploads inbox. And you'll notice this should look pretty familiar. I mean, you already have the client uploads inbox. And the tables work very similar to other tables in Keeper. And that's because we designed Keeper receipts to work completely seamlessly with your existing closing processes and feel like a very natural extension of the product rather than a disjointed experience that's an entirely standalone app. So what that means is, one, there's nothing for you to need to train your team on. And two, there's no new experience you need to train your clients on. So on that note, let's talk about clients. Let's talk about how they can upload receipts to Keeper. There's three main ways. First, just like they're used to in the client portal, they can drag and drop a file right here, whether they're on web or on mobile. So they can drag a file here. They can give you a description, say Superhuman is mail client software, and then submit that. Once they do, it's going to go back here into the uploads inbox. We're going to immediately start scanning it. We're going to try and recognize if it's a receipt or not. And then if it is, we're going to put it down here in your transaction files. The reason why that's so important is because this is one place where your clients can send you every document, they may not all be receipts. So here's a good example. This is a bank statement, and that bank statement will scan and will say, this is not a receipt. So it'll stay in your uploads inbox instead of going down into your transaction files. Okay, second is the practice phone number. So if your clients text you, or if you've ever set this up to text your clients, you can now have your clients text you images to your connected practice phone number. So just to show you guys an example here, I'm going to send a text here, and we should see that show up as well. So give a selfie. Say hi. Go ahead and send that in. And basically what we're doing here is we're seeing this phone number, which is identified directly with me, and we'll use that to route it to DemoCo. So now we can see, if we refresh the page, we can see we've got that screenshot right here as well. So hopefully your clients will just be using this to send you receipts, but if they want to send you selfies, that's their prerogative. And they'll come in here just fine as well. And as you can see, they'll get scanned. They'll stay in the uploads inbox because we'll identify it as not a transaction. And third, and most excitingly, we also have these forwarding emails. Forwarding emails essentially give you a unique email per client that you can use to email in receipts, or your clients can use to email in receipts as well. The really nice thing about this is your clients don't have to be contacts. So for example, if you work with let's say you just work with the owner in the portal, but the owner maybe has some employees where the employees maybe need to submit receipts, they can submit those receipts even if they're not contacts in Keeper. Or if you have vendors who need to submit invoices, you can give them this ID as well. And again, everything will come right here into Keeper. So here, just to show one more example, we got a receipt right here sent to me. And all I need to do is forward it to democo@books.cc. If I wanted to, I could add more information here, but we'll go ahead and send that along. Here, we may need to wait just a couple of shakes because it'll get stuck through Gmail's sending, but we should see that come through very shortly. Okay, there we go. You can see we've got a description here. All right, so we've got some documents in here. And while this finishes up scanning, which usually, as you can see here, happens pretty quickly, within sort of 5 to 15 seconds, it usually finishes up scanning. So you don't need to wait a long time. You don't need to upload these and come back later. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of our transaction files here. First things first, we have Superhuman. And I think the cool thing to note about this is we haven't done anything special here, except for one thing that I'll show in a moment. And this is already ready to post. The reason for that is what Keeper Receipts does is it reads Superhuman on the receipt. It says, hey, you've got a Superhuman vendor already in your vendor list. So we're going to suggest that. And we're going to say, hey, you always code Superhuman to software. You always give it this, this description. You always give it this class, engineering. And so we autofill all of that information. And to show you that we're autofilling it, we'll put this little light bulb right here. So that's all we need to do. This is already 100% ready to go. We can also see here, if you want to drill down on what's driving those suggestions, you just click similar transactions here. You get your whole table. And then here, just like anything, you can see this, you can edit it. And any of these fields are editable as well. So if for some reason we didn't want this going to software, we wanted it going to office supplies, we could do that here as well. We can add multiple line items here. If you're Canadians, you will also do GST, HST, PST, QST, all the ST tax extraction here. And then last but not least, we'll go ahead and change this back to software. Last but not least, you can also create rules for this. Before I create what we call a vendor rule here, I want to talk about an existing rule that's already helping us classify that. And that's this 2400 card rule. So you have a custom rules engine that's super flexible that basically will let you search for anything. So here we're just searching for scan text contains 2400 because those are the last 4 digits of my checking account debit card. And once we do that, you'll see here, we have a rule applied that says, hey, we found Visa 2400 in the payment method. So that means that the payment account should be Chase checking. And then also that means that the type should be an expense because we found that. That means it's been paid. So you don't have to set that, but we set that as well. Okay, so now all we need to do here, we could post this transaction or we can create a vendor rule. And so this is a good example of how we can continue to leverage all of the work that we're already doing to OCR data out of the transaction to automate future work. So here we're going to say, when we recognize that that vendor is Superhuman, go ahead and set the vendor to Superhuman, set the type to expense, set the category to software, set the description to whatever the description should be, the class to engineering, and then we're autofilling the payment account as well, but we could take this out and then create the rule. And that way we have these 2 rules that are driving, automating how this receipt gets processed. And then we're just ready to go. We post the transaction. It's going to punch that immediately into the ledger. And then here, if you want, you can click. It'll show up a pop-up and you can click here and that will take you to the transaction here too, where you can see that everything was classified properly. Of course, now we're going to sit and wait for a second for QuickBooks. We can see everything's classified properly. We've got our memo here, and then we also have the receipt right there as well. So yeah, that's the median experience in Keeper. We'll auto-process a lot of your transactions. You can create rules to auto-process even more. But some things should not be auto-processed and posted as new transactions. And that's if they are already existing as matches. So here, for example, we can see this action has these sort of 2 branches down into one. And what that means is we found a potential match. So here we can see in the receipt, we found this as June 2nd for Apollo for $99. And then here we can see as well, we have this $99 transaction that's already in the ledger. I'm going to pull up the receipt viewer as well here so you can see we've got this ZenLeads Apollo receipt for $99. Same date. Looks like this should be a match. So we can go ahead and click confirm match. And what happens here if we match this is it just takes this receipt and instead of posting a new transaction in the ledger, it just inserts this as an attachment to the existing QuickBooks transaction. All right. Well, I think that is a quick primer. I think that is, oh, last but not least, I want to make sure we talk about one more thing. So I'm going to add one more file here, which is questions. Okay, so we're going to upload another superhuman transaction here. So we should see that again, finish processing in a second. And then that rule should actually auto scan everything here. So here we can see again, completely auto scanned, completely ready to post. But there's one more thing. What happens if you need more insight from your clients? In that case here, you can click ask question, ask your clients a question. Pretty common example here. Let's say you need the detailed receipt for this transaction. And then when you add this to the client portal, it'll show up in your client's portal in their transaction questions, just like any other transaction question that you're asking that already exists in the ledger. So here we've got that. And you can even see if we click into this, we'll add a little thumbnail here. You can click into the thumbnail, see the receipt so they can remember what it is that you're asking them about as well. And then of course they can respond or upload files, whatever you need. All right. Well, that's going to wrap our quick demo here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and turn back over to the receipt capture slideshow that I am so comfortable with. And we're going to talk about the roadmap. So everything that I've shown you is live today, but as folks who are familiar with Keeper know, we're never done. We're constantly making improvements, constantly upgrading the software every single week. And so I wanted to talk about a few of the key upgrades that we're making to receipts over the very near term. First is a mobile app. I know lots of you have clients who will not text in receipts or will not open up a browser or will not do anything if they can't have a mobile app. So we are working on a mobile app for the client portal that you can use, both one for regular communication and two, to give your clients a really easy way to upload receipts right from their phone. Second is we're adding Xero support. So everything that I've shown you right now is just live on QuickBooks, but we are adding Xero very soon. And then third, I think this one is particularly exciting for especially for some Canadians who need to recalculate tax, is in-cell arithmetic. So what we're working on adding, again, very, very near future, is if you have, just like in QuickBooks, if you type like 7/2, and that will show up as 3.5, we're working on that in-cell arithmetic as well. There are lots of other improvements here, like editing match transactions, a rapid processing mode, vendor addresses extracted by OCR. I won't go through all of them here. You can read them. We will, of course, have this recording published later, and we'll also publish the slides along with it. But suffice it to say, we are going to continue to improve Keeper Receipts for a long, long time. And we are super excited to, of course, continue to incorporate your feedback as well for the things that we have not already built. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause and welcome Sherri-Lee.
Hey.
So Sherri-Lee, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Okay, I want to add something to your roadmap and get everybody to vote on it. Auto-publish.
Yes, auto-publish is a great one. I'll make a note of that right here, right now.
Yeah.
Publish.
And that's not something with the current receipt capture that I'm using that I can do. And mainly that's because of the accuracy and everything in here and the multi-level of rules in here. So that for me, I'm excited if you get that.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to start. So auto publishing, definitely a key feature for you, Sherri-Lee. Tell me about some of the other key features that are important for you when you're choosing a receipt capture solution.
So a receipt capture, like any app, I look at it as it's got to have the basics of a good ask. So, and not yours, Ben, and not Kenny's, but for me, ASS is my personal acronym for any app, and it's A is for accuracy. So, you know, who cares about speed if an app isn't accurate? And then the next one is simple setup, so simple and streamlined. And then the third one is support. And to me, everything flows right back to that. So, you know, if I'm looking at an integration, is it simple? Does it work? That kind of thing. If I'm looking at when you're looking at receipts here. Multi-devices, phone, tablet, desktop, how can it be used? So is it simple? Can the client adapt to it easily? Which if they're already in Keeper, of course they can do that, right? Collaboration. You like that, don't you?
By design.
But the ability, like collaborating with your team and collaborating with the client, which is really great as they upload, they can comment. So, that I'd like to see it enhanced a little bit further, but hey, baby steps, just getting that in is really good. And then when I'm looking at things, report, can we do reports? What can we get? So again, this can flow into the other areas, and we can export a CSV. But I would say you're going to ask me what my favorite feature is, and I'm going to say it's the rules. And what you didn't show is the ability to what I call layering rules. So layering rules, if you went back there, is because I work in the brewing industry, everything states liquor distribution somewhere. And with liquor distribution, I want it to look for, that could be a receipt for a purchase of liquor to resell, or that could be liquor distribution or BC liquor sales, grabbing that. But then that one might be a settlement. It might be different things. So actually, if you don't mind sharing the screen and opening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this for me is what I feel is what is so different. The if then that. So when you go to your rules, so I could have multiple rules for one vendor. So a perfect example would be, say, Fortis, our fuel company here. So if the rule is, Fortis, that could be, and so I'm looking for if the vendor name contains Fortis, right? You got scan text. But if the vendor name contains Fortis and the scan text contains rental, then that is in fact equipment rental. So we are, the client may be renting a giant cylinder, right? So then we can change that. So that's where it's if all or if any. But it then could be the scan text contains propane. So propane is in fact equipment fuel, right? So it's the same, and what I want to see is being able to take this, duplicate it, and then finesse it, not that I'm asking for a lot.
I think that's a very reasonable ask.
Yeah, so then it's like if that contains it, then this, the vendor is still Fortis, but the category. So this layering, I feel, is what differentiates it, because we could have something like Cisco, and Cisco can have multiple things, and the ability to scan the text is really accurate. It's good, it's accurate, it's finding that. But again, so you can have that one vendor. So this is, of all the features in here, this is my favorite.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherri-Lee. And yeah, I hope folks will forgive me for not having Fortis set up as a vendor here. Although I would mention I can add a new vendor here if I wanted.
Yeah.
Just not from the rule screen.
And you can put multiple. So you're just showing that rule really simplistically, but it can also go to, like, let's just say Toyota. You could have a Toyota lease, and the Toyota lease is always in that rule, $600, right?
Yep.
So you can change that. And that goes to your lease. Whereas it could also be Toyota, it could be repairs, right? So adding that where it's, the if then that is what I love about this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sherri-Lee. I appreciate that, and I'm sure other folks will appreciate it as well. And I will make sure we get those improvements in that you mentioned.
Gotcha.
Okay. Talk to me about how Keeper Receipts handles Canadian taxes in your experience so far.
Oh, good. Really, really good. So it works on the extract method, which means it's extracting the actual amount. So instead of trying to figure it out and going, oh, it's this, it's fuel, so it's 5% or whatever. It is in fact keying right up with the QuickBooks, currently QuickBooks tax codes, and it's publishing it right over as if we had manually entered it. So that's huge. And getting your tax codes correct. So in Canada, we have a lot different rules here. We're all accrual based, everything like that. So we have to have supporting documentation. When we file a GST claim, we have to have, if we're audited, it has to be there. So having it give the correct figures and easily is huge. And in fact, that was the very first thing I said to you. I wouldn't even touch your app unless you had good Canadian tax codes and working that way. So I said, start with the hardest place in the world to work with, which is Canada, and then go from there. Everything will be easy.
It's funny. I even had an Australian customer we were working with, and he was talking about, well, you guys already have support for Canada. It's like that, but much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So talk to me about, so there's the tax piece. Talk to me about how, at a high level, why is having a receipt management solution, doesn't have to be Keeper, why is that so important?
Well, that is, the very first thing I say to my clients on having a receipt solution is something that a lot of people miss, because everybody thinks about running your business, knowing where you're at, knowing the bills or whatever. But what I see is when you know what you owe, it's actually vendor relations. So if I'm constantly having to ask you to pay a bill, when you ask me for something, I'm like, you can't even pay your bills on time, right? So a good receipt management like that is something that people don't talk about, is good vendor relations. But of course, it's having support, it's sort of the standards, having support for audits, knowing exactly what your payables are. So again, in Canada, we are all accrual based. So our bills have to be entered on the date of the bill. We can't just say the expense happened on the date it was paid. So for us, that's huge. And there's businesses that, like construction. I mean, I think that's a kind of obvious one, construction, where you need to know, are you on budget, right? How, whether your business is, you're spending too much or not. But one of the other things about good receipt management that I also say to my clients is it helps deter employee fraud. So one that I regularly see is fuel and cigarettes, that, we were getting fuel and we lost the receipt. And then you start to see the trend of the fuel seems to always be a little bit more than it should be. And one day you get the receipt and you see that there's been cigarettes added to it. So, I would say the standards of the business knowing, where they stand. And the very last one is receipts fade.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And if I can just add one to that, it is the ability to have a thing where you can just take a picture and then forget the ink fading, just being able to throw it away, not being encumbered by a receipt you need to deal with later. No shoeboxes is a really nice thing that we have found internally for both improving documentation and reducing the burden on ourselves and our employees.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I always tell people to keep them if they can.
Awesome. Well, Sherri-Lee, you've got the world watching here. So you already talked about auto publish. If you could have one more feature that you'd want to see added to Keeper receipts, other than some of the ones we mentioned are already coming, what would that be?
Gosh, the auto publish, you've already got it built in. I would love to see it integrated even better with the bank feed.
Well, I am super excited. I didn't mention that, but I am super excited. There's a lot of super cool stuff that should be coming with that in fairly short order.
And that would be for us with the multi-currency. So integrating better with the bank feed would be huge. So I think our big pain points in Canada are the sales tax, the multi-currency, stuff like that. So I mean, you're already solving them. But yeah, auto publish, I think if you had to get people to vote on that, once they set the rule up and it does it, that just gets the workflow going that much quicker. I would love to be able to use that.
Awesome.
I would say the other thing that you did mention that I am really happy that I like is it's one email in. So as a user, I'm not having to set up a specific email address for Ben, one for Kenny, one for, this person, that person. It's grabbing, it comes in, but then the columns, you can actually see who submitted it. So that for us saves a lot of time. And I think, I'm not sure if you put on there, sorry, I'm just going to add more, is integration with Dropbox. So for those people that want something, either Dropbox or Google Drive, that it either, one way or two ways, that it's either putting it there for storage and security, or it's uploading from there.
Awesome. I got it down here on my notes here. Okay. Well, I am going to take things back and go to the slideshow for one more time, just very briefly. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So we've talked a lot about what you can do with receipts. I want to talk a little bit about what next steps look like. So first is, this is our global launch, but Keeper is still in a beta while we work through a couple of the key elements we think are essential to have when we sort of go live for everyone. But it's an open access beta, which means anyone who wants to get access can get access. You can ask if you use Keeper, you can write into support. Otherwise, you can also email receipts_feedback@keeper.app. Request to join the beta, we'll let you right on in. And the price. Keeper Receipts is going to cost $15 per month in the US, or the equivalent $21 Canadian in Canada. During the beta, which we expect to be roughly the next couple of months, we're running 60 2/3 essentially discount. So during the beta, files connected only cost $5 a month for the US and $7 a month for Canada. All right. Well, with that, I am going to turn things over to the Q&A. I saw we have some things building up in the chat. So I'm going to stop my share at this point and make my way over to the questions. And start going through things. Okay. So Andrea asked, if a client forwards a receipt via email and they put a note in the body of the email, where would we see that? It's a great question. I am going to actually forward one and I can show what that looks like. But basically it will show up in a notes column. So let me go ahead and forward that in and I will show y'all.
You need to share your screen, Ben.
Yeah, I'm working on, I had to send the email first. Okay, I suspect I will probably need to just keep my screen shared here. Okay, let's go ahead and send that email here. Okay. So as we can see, I just sent the same item here. You can see here where it says receipt, it has a description. I can show y'all what that description looks like right now. You can see that will contain the subject. That will also contain any text input that comes anywhere else. So now that finished scanning, it went down into our receipts file. And up here, you'll see in the notes section, that's where you'll see the notes as well. So if your client comes in here and says like, this is for XYZ, you'll be able to see that right here. Okay, I'm gonna just keep my screen shared and then pop the questions off to my other monitor. Okay, next. If a client has multiple companies tied to a phone number, how can the scanned document be assigned to the correct company? It's a great question. We actually spent a ton of time making sure that that we had a good solution for this. Basically, what happens is if that client has multiple companies, there will show up essentially a banner at the top. It's called a staging area, and it will go into the staging area, and then it will prompt you to say, should this go to client A or should this go to client B? We've written a little more about, maybe I can show it in the receipts beta. We've written a little bit more about this in staging areas here in the docs. So yeah, you can see essentially that's what this looks like. I don't have a phone number handy that's connected to 2 clients, so I can't show you all this live. But basically, you can choose which client you can send this to. Okay. Okay, next question is also a staging area question. What happens to receipts texted in from a number not recognized by Keeper? That's another great question. And this happens not only for receipts texted in by an unrecognized number, but also from receipts texted in from a recognized number, but we recognize that number is tied to a user and not to a contact. And what we'll do in that case is we put it in what we call a global staging area. So whereas in a staging area like this, that will only show up on the clients that you have access to. For a global staging area, it will show up in any client. It will also show up on your client list. So you can see you've got texted in receipts, and then you can use those to push them into a particular client or create a contact out of them. For matching transactions to things that already exist in the QBO ledger, how far back does that look for transactions? That will look as far back as we have access to. So that's the last 12 months. And then it'll also look in the current month as well. So for example, if you're in the January 2024 close, which would be the latest close at the moment, it will search from January 2024, January 2023, all the way to February 2024. So that does bring up a good point. If you're working on 2-year-old books, or you're working on a cleanup from 2021 or something horrible like that, that some of you do have to deal with, just set it back to an older close, and that'll make sure that we can match to the right transactions. Okay. Andrea asked, if Keeper's disconnected, let's say the client disengages, what happens to receipts? Simple answer is you just shut off receipts. All the receipts will continue to live in your client's files. And of course, any transaction that you've posted into the ledger from receipts will get, will still live in QuickBooks, because that's where they get posted to. And then you can just disconnect the client, disengage receipts. You'll no longer continue to get charged for it, and the receipts will still stay there.
Is there ability to download that for the client?
We are working on a better file export system. So the short answer is yes, it's a little clunky today, but we're working at very short order on a better file exporting system for that. Okay. Susie asked, can we use this to receive check deposits so that we can essentially create payments from customers? The answer is not yet, but this is on our short list. If we go back to our list of improvements, more transaction types, so invoice, sales, receipts, and of course payments, so that you can run the gamut and upload anything into Keeper Receipts and then post it to the appropriate transaction type in QuickBooks.
Can I add to that, Ben? You can take a picture of a check and it just goes into the documents area.
Yeah, so
go to the receipt publishing.
Exactly. So that would be one of those documents here in the uploads inbox. And so, yeah, coming soon, we'll have the ability to create a new appropriate transaction out of that as well. Veronica asked, and hi, Veronica, where are the receipts going to be stored for the long term, in QBO or Keeper or both? The answer is both. So the any documents that you post in Keeper will get attached to the expense or bill or whatever in QuickBooks. So they'll all live right here and they live there indefinitely. We also store the archive on our end. you'll see that in your transaction files. So if we go to transactions, you'll see any transaction you post will show up here. One of the other things we're working on improving is allowing this to be more easily searchable. So you could search to see the specific transaction out of here. So I know that's a feature request a lot of people have been really interested in, and that should be coming soon. Alana asked, what if the receipt total doesn't perfectly match the actual transaction? That's an interesting point. And it would lead me to ask the question of why doesn't that match? I'll mention a couple of things. So first is you as of next week, you'll be able to move essentially manually match, so move an attachment to a particular transaction without having it be tied to a client, or sorry, without needing it to match exactly. But also what you can also do is if you, let's say this is 99 and the amount in QuickBooks is 100, you can also update this and it will update the matching criteria as well.
Ben, while you're here, you can also show using the filter, just like you can on any other, so you can actually mask code. So if you have a number of transactions in there, say Superhuman, you can code 6 or 7 of them all at once.
Yeah, exactly. So if we wanted these all to be Superhuman, just the same way that we can update any transaction in bulk in Keeper, you can always bulk edit. And then, of course, when we bulk suggest Superhuman, you can bulk update category, but we'll also make suggestions like, oh, if it's Superhuman, it should probably also be software and engineering like we've gone over earlier. Okay, Rebecca asked what file formats are accepted. PDF is accepted, PNG, JPEG. I think if you upload an HEIC, we convert it to a JPEG. So all the common file formats, I think, are the main ones. We accept all file formats. We just can't read all file formats. So if your client gives you an Excel spreadsheet, it will still show up here in your uploads inbox. It just won't get scanned and put down in your transaction files. Yowsi asked, if you have an admin in the office reviewing receipts and entering bills, can I just give them access to the receipt management side of things in Keeper? The answer is not yet, but a lot of this functionality we're going to work on bringing into the portal as well, so that if you have clients who do their own classification, you can still let them submit documents into Keeper, so they have one central place for that, while also allowing them to delegate, or while also allowing you to delegate that coding. Rebecca asked, are class and location fields that can be populated? Yes, and I'll add one more. So is customer. You just have to turn those on in your client's file settings. So if you turn on location and customer, go ahead and save the page. Save those. So let's refresh. So you can see now we've got the option to fill in location, the option to fill in class, and the option to identify a customer here, and even mark an expense or an expense line as billable.
So that's a great one for construction, that in your rules you can have, if it has a name to it, a job name, to make it billable.
Yeah. And then, of course, if you make this as billable, all the downstream automations of being able to pull it into an invoice will happen once it's in QuickBooks. Okay, Cassie asked, will it be able to recognize if there are multiple receipts scanned into a single document? The answer is not yet. We're working on a way to essentially break those up into two separate documents as well as merge them together. So not yet, but coming soon. Okay, Tiffany asked if you can search for vendor, amount, type, etc., all like you can in HubDoc. Not yet, but when I was mentioning earlier, we're planning on some improvements to files, and they all live down here. Those are the improvements for planning, so that you can search for vendor or search for amount or whatever, and then all of your transactions will be visible. All of the receipts will be visible there as well. Raymond asked if the rules can have expenses from certain customers, from certain vendors as billable to a customer. I think I answered that as yes. Can you download? I'm seeing a few questions for can you download all receipts? That should be coming soon. So I think you actually may be able to today. They're just not super organized. So you can like check this off here and then shift click. Sorry, shift click. Yeah, so you can both download these today, but they won't be super organized. And if you click download, it'll email you a CSV, email you a zip. Okay, Andrew asked, how easily can a client get back to reference a specific receipt? So this is another one of the things we're planning to improve in the portal, similar to what I was mentioning with my answer to Yausi's question with respect to clients being able to code. So working on a way to give you the ability to give your clients more access to this information. Okay, if there's a match in the register. Okay, I think, Kirsten, I think the question is if you have like a matched transaction like this, are you able to, so basically what happens if you match a transaction is all we're doing is we're taking that file and we're attaching it. But coming next week, you'll be able to take this and edit it directly here from Keeper. Of course, if you wanted to, because this lives in Keeper, you could also just search for Apollo and edit it here directly. But yeah, coming next week, you will have the ability to take those matches and edit them right from this screen right here, instead of needing to go back and do that elsewhere in Keeper. Okay, Emily asked if we have any info or videos teaching the client how to use this feature. That's a really good point. The answer is not yet, but we are working on essentially templated resources that you can send both as like email. So you can go to your message client and send that as a new email. That's not live yet, but should be coming soon as well, so that you can give your clients a one-click option to explain how this works. Julie asked, do the rules in Keeper read or integrate with the rules in QuickBooks? The answer is not yet. There is not currently an API for the rules. If that does change, then the answer to this question will change.
So Ben, what about having rules copy from client to client?
That we are working on, and that will be for receipt processing rules. Okay, Greg asked if this would be product or service friendly or only works at the account category level. This is one of the improvements we're working to add before Keeper goes quote unquote out of beta. But yes, absolutely, we're planning to add product and service, so itemization support. Can you have receipts-only users? This was a question from Monique. The answer is no, but I'd be curious to learn more about the use case there. Could be something that we could build. Brittany asked about allowing the customer to code certain fields. That is, I think, that is part of the broader set of improvements we're planning on adding to bring this into the client portal. Heather asked if we can push these through as bills instead of just expenses. The answer is yes. So we've just been looking at expenses here, but of course, you can have bills as well. And then you wouldn't have a payment account for a bill, but you can have a due date. Rochelle asked, will it identify duplicate documents? So if one's, for example, a PO and the other's an invoice? The answer is not directly, so it wouldn't sort of take those and auto-match them together. What would happen, though, is if you created a transaction from one of them, so you created the transaction from the PO, for example, when we would then immediately recognize that the invoice should match to that transaction as well. Andrea asked, can I manually push a document to receipts if Keeper doesn't recognize it as one? Yes, you can. There's one way to do it, and we're making it even better as of next week. Laura asked, if someone goes to lunch and pays with a tip, will the receipt read the handwriting or just the typed stuff? It will read the handwriting. So I can see if I can scrounge up a transaction here with a demo, but just so y'all can see live what that looks like. Okay, here we've got one. No, don't.
I can say that it's really accurate in getting figures correctly. The 8s and 6s and 0s seem to be read really well.
Okay, Marianne asked, vendors will send receipts via mail that aren't attachments. So for example, Lowe's, will Keeper receipts be able to read those email receipts if they are forwarded? It's a great question. The answer is yes. Basically what happens is if there is an attachment, we'll use that attachment as the receipt. If there's not an attachment, we'll essentially take the PDF as an attachment. Or take the PDF of the email as an attachment and use that as the documentation. Can the client email multiple receipts? Yes. Will payment confirmation emails get recognized as receipts? The answer is yes. In most cases, we have explicitly tested this with QBO payment receipts. So I can confidently answer that one, yes. But if you notice any weird, this is, I think, a good point to mention. We are constantly making improvements to our receipts functionality and especially to our OCR and tuning that to make sure we're picking up receipts and only receipts, reducing both our false positives and our false negatives. So if you notice something that didn't process correctly, shoot it to receiptsfeedback@keeper.app. That's receipts_feedback@keeper.app, so that we can help better incorporate that into our tuning.
That's where you beautifully combine Stripe.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I didn't even mention this here, but it is something that we do. So this sucks. But in receipts from Stripe, Keeper uses Stripe. So in most receipts from Stripe, you get 2 copies. You get the invoice and the receipt. And so in most solutions, that would count as 2 invoices, 2 documents. And then you would have a duplicate for every single time you have an invoice from Stripe, which is often for recurring subscriptions, so 12 times a year per vendor. But what we do is we'll take that invoice and that receipt. This is special logic for Stripe, so we won't do this for everyone, but special logic for Stripe, so that if we see that pattern, we'll automatically merge them together as the receipt and the invoice so that you have both of them here together. Joel asked about clients that record itemized line items of their bills. That is coming soon. It is not live in the beta today, but definitely something that we're planning to add is extraction of the lines. Rocio asked if there will be an expense report option. The answer is yes. That is part of the broader set of improvements we're working on with the client portal.
I will say you can monkey around that by looking at who submitted. So if you had a employee who is submitting on your screen there, you can see the name. So you can at least get some of those receipts. And if you're using a clearing account, do that for now.
Yep. Yeah, so definitely there are some workarounds, but we don't want, that's a core enough workflow. We don't want that to need to be solved only by a workaround. Okay, Wayne asked, can we match to other types of transactions like journal entries? I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. I don't have a specific example here, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. If not, then the answer will soon be yes. And I'll write that down so I can get back to you. Okay. Can you update the transaction? Okay. So Dave asked if you can update the transaction to put, for example, DBT, if you find out that it's made on a credit card, or sorry, on a debit card, excuse me. This is actually a great example of what rules are helpful for. So for example, we had that 2400. But what we can do here is we can say the payment account is Chase checking, the type is expense. And then what we can also do is we can say the item number. Where are we here? Looks like we may not be able to set the item number. Okay, well, that is something we should definitely add because it makes total sense and it's like already doable within the rule system. Basically, what you will soon be able to do is take a rule, edit, like set the line or the item of the rule. Sorry, this would be this one. So for the 2400 card rule, and then you'd be able to just say like choose the item here and set the item to DBT. And then that would make sure that anytime you see spend on 2400, you're going to auto set the item. Andrea asked, can I forward an email receipt from a client? I have one client who will probably never make the switch, but I can set up a rule in Gmail to forward her emails. That would still work. Yes, that will still work. That is one of the beautiful things about having this be a forwarding email that is unique to that client. If you send an email to books.democo@books.cc, so in your case, whatever your client's file is, if you send that email there by rule, it will just go straight into Keeper. Karen asked, does the other type allow for vendor credits? The answer is yes. Show that here. Other is right now it's credit card credits and vendor credits, but we're working on other options as well. Cassie asked if a rule is applied, can you still change it and review it? And the answer is, of course, yes. So here, for example, we can see this is set by rule to be software, but if we want, we can change it to bank charges and fees. And you can see just the lightning bolt's going to go away because that no longer was classified by the rule. Tiffany asked, when I said soon, what I mean by soon. For the case of all the receipt improvements I've mentioned so far in this call, we're talking like weeks to like a month or two. So we're not talking like soon means 2027. Yeah. All right. I think that is most of the questions. I know there are quite a few other ones. So if we did not answer your question, if we can get an export of this, Josh, after the call, we will go back and answer your questions. I will mention one more time. I see one here. Alicia, what is the beta email address? It is receipts_feedback@keeper.app. So if you send us an email there, we'll get you access to Keeper receipts in the beta. Like I said, it's open access. Anyone who wants it can get access. As you can see here, there are some things we are still working on, and that will be the case forever. Just because it goes live, we will doesn't mean anything changes. We will still continue to make improvements every single week. All right. With that, I am going to officially stop my share. And thank you all so much for coming. I know spending the last hour with me just talking about receipts is not everyone's idea of a good time, but I appreciate all of you for watching this and for staying with me and asking such great questions We are so excited to work with you to continue to make Keeper Receipts better every single week. Sherri-Lee, of course, the rock star, the inimitable Sherri-Lee, thank you so much for joining us and for explaining why receipts is so important and what you look for in software that I will not repeat. In case you were doing work here or you were not able to make this, I know we had some problems with everyone being able to register. We will be sending out a recording of this call after. We'll post it on YouTube. We'll send everyone a link. But thank you all so much for joining. It was truly a pleasure sharing this Thursday afternoon with you. And I look forward to seeing many of you again in person and over Zoom sometime very soon.